I am Christina, the Managing Director of First Fruit Group of Charities. First Fruit was set up by Peter and Hannah Watherston. This video takes you through their story, which is also the story of the First Fruit charity, how it came to be set up, the vision behind it, the various projects that have been run under the First Fruit Group of Charities. In short, the history of the charity in the words of the founders.
Well, we first came to this part of London. We didn't come together. I was single and was appointed chaplain to the Mayflower Family Centre. And this, where we're sitting now, is what the Mayflower Family Centre consisted of, a number of buildings here. And I came here at the beginning of 1982, and Hannah came from the north to be part of the work that was going on here, working with youngsters in the youth clubs and so on, and had a room in the building here. And I was living in a house next to the chapel there, and then in the house that's just down there. And so that was our first experience, both of us, of this place. And for us together, we married. We come from rather different backgrounds after 3 years, and had our children here. And both our children still live here. And until shortly last year, both of them still worked in the borough, and Elizabeth still does and is a councillor. And so we now were married and could then go and buy a house or find a house to live in. We'd moved ourselves to East Ham, and we had a house there. And very fortunately, a long-standing friend of mine called Jonathan Ruffer offered to be the funder for what we were going to do, including keeping us with some money to live on. He then said we could actually start some projects and work with that. So we began quite small, and in the garden of our house we had a shed which became a workshop for Hannah's business, which was making clothes. And so with his help we formed this First Fruit Trading, which was the sewing business that Hannah set up, teaching people how to sew, but needing a market to sell the things in. Housing side, I became the trustee of the Christian Care Centre in Forest Gate, which was a 10-bedroom hostel. We grew as First Fruit to a slightly bigger size. We took over the managing of that hostel to begin providing something on the housing side as well. And then there was various other things that came along. We set up a little company to do building work, and we got a couple of young guys who were trainees, and we bought a house in Forest Gate, which was very, very run down, Strone Road. I think we bought it for £49,000, and they did it up, and we managed to sell it for £105,000, I think, which covered the costs of what we were doing. We had another house we bought in Cumberland Road, and on this occasion we had some money of ourselves, so we decided that we would keep that house as a hostel for young men. So that formed the beginning of those attempts. We'd done various projects here, and we had thought that we wanted to be wider than just what we were doing on the site here. So a small group of us, 4 of us, were working out plans to expand what we were doing in terms of housing and other things to a bigger range. But then came a point when it became difficult for us to go on working here, and so we left Mayflower. But the plans that we were working on, we thought we could still continue to use those plans. And what we were doing was we recognized that the main problems for the area were unemployment and homelessness. So those interlocked to some degree. If you haven't got a job, you may not be able to afford a house or rental, and therefore you have to go into a hostel. If you are staying in the hostel, unless you get a job, you can't move out of the hostel really, and so there was just a no job, no home type of policy going on. So we were keen that if we were doing it together, that we would work with hostels which were jobs-led hostels so that we'd get out of that. So we wanted to work on the job side and on the hostel side. But there was also, we were receiving a huge number of people from abroad, new people, refugees and people who were coming over, particularly war-led countries. You could tell immediately that there was war in certain countries because you'd suddenly have a flood of people from that country coming here. There was that range of things going on and it wasn't being dealt with very effectively. So we set up this charity called First Fruit. What we wanted, we would come as a Christian couple really, and so we wanted to base it on our Christian faith and biblical principles. And I've always felt and believed that we're finally, when we leave this world, going into glory, and that time is going to be amazing, and no pain, no suffering, no tears, but love as the center of it, and therefore working with people in order to bring them out of difficult circumstances and give them a hope and give them a future. And so we use the word first fruit, which in the Bible is used for the group of people who are forerunners of what is finally going to come. It's the first sign of what the final kingdom is going to be. And so we hoped that we would be that and called ourselves First Fruit.
Peter has explained how he met his wife, Hannah, in East London. Hannah played a significant role in the development of First Fruits. She was instrumental in setting up our flagship project, First Fruit Trading. This was a birth of a social enterprise. Before the word social enterprise was coined and became commonly used in our day-to-day vocabulary. Here is Hannah explaining in her own words her contribution to the history of First Fruits.
First Fruit Trading came out of a garment program that we had in Mayflower actually. We just used to call it the Garment Workshop. My personal trade is the fashion trade and garments manufacture and teaching how to make stuff, so that's my own trade, and so it was quite natural in the situation that we're in to pass those skills on, help to get particularly women into work that actually would be meaningful work for them. So we designed certain baby clothes and children's clothes, and that happened all at Mayflower. When we came to live here in this house, Plashet Grove, it brings back lots of memories. We needed to have a place where I could do sewing and I could teach sewing. And so we built the shed at the bottom of the garden. You can't see it through the trees, but there is a shed. And that's where we started First Fruit Trading. As part of what we believe to be kingdom work, and we believe that the name First Fruit, Peter will have said, I'm sure, comes out of first fruits of the kingdom. And so for me, sharing skills was all part of my Christian faith. And that's how we began to start doing the workshop here.
First Fruit is the mother charity or the holding charity for all the other projects that are set up under it. Each of the projects are set up as separate legal entities with their own board and with their own special purpose. For example, Just Homes is an accommodation charity. Its purpose is to provide accommodation-based support to the homeless. Or Aspire. It was set up as a catalogue distribution company to provide first-stage employment to the homeless. Various different projects were set up under First Fruit Charity, making use of market opportunities at that point and economic forces around that time. Peter goes through the life cycle of some of those charities. The group structure is Peter's brainchild. The advantages: each charity or each social enterprise is a separate legal entity. Hence, when one project has run through its lifetime, it can be closed without affecting the rest of the charities. For example, First Fruit Warehousing, our furniture recycling project, was set up at the height of the boom in the city to take advantage of the opportunity to recycle furniture and not to let them go into landfill sites. When First Fruit was set up, the aim of the social enterprises were to give our client group a real work experiences in a real work situation, placing commercial pressures. Many clients get training one after another, but when they actually go for employment, the one question they ask is, have you got experience? The projects set up under First Fruits were meant to tackle this particular aspect, to give people a real work experience in a real work context, in a real commercial situation.
Aspire, that was the product of a couple of young men from Oxford University having a catalogue of goods from the third world countries which people could buy. And so they would be put through the doors of people's houses, and then you'd go back to pick up the orders from people. And so we recruited a group of people who were paid to be able to go and deliver those catalogues in the first place. And just on the staff side, we had taken on, the other thing we were doing really very early on was to run employment preparation courses. And because of our contacts with a whole lot of the churches around in the area, we could offer it to a church and say, if you send people out to knock on people's doors and offer them this employment preparation course, it will tell people how to form CVs of what they've done so far, etc., and interview techniques, and just the general way in which you could do better at actually gaining a job. And so that would then be taught to the group over 2 or 3 days. So that happened in really quite a lot of different churches locally to encourage people to get into jobs.
When we moved out of the workshop in the bottom of the garden, we moved actually to Bonnie Down to take premises there and expand the work. And then from Bonnie Downs we moved back to Mayflower to continue to expand the work. At that point in time, when we'd actually moved back to Mayflower, because it was a bigger property and a bigger space to do manufacturing, we then, at that point in time, there was a lot of Eastern European women coming over, either to claim asylum or to just come in to find work. They were highly skilled, and that really gave us an edge on what we did. And so at that time we were doing, believe it or not, cheerleading outfits, and these girls were just amazing. And so the business grew from there. What had happened in our industry is that it had all been taken abroad practically, and the skills were dying, and so we were particularly wanting to set up manufacturing back here. And so that's the connection with small designers and niche designers. So the cheerleading outfit with niche design. Leslie George designed beautiful stuff with pleat, and Topshop, we just did Topshop work, which is the lower end bread and butter. It was just an extension of what I'd always done, and what is my passion is to share the skills. And it created jobs, it created opportunities and jobs for people who really were struggling to find work.
What happened following that was that this person that I talked about, who was running a recycling of office furniture on a bigger scale, came and approached us to ask whether he could use our team who are doing the catalogues to shift furniture for him in what he was doing, and he paid us to be able to do that. And then he rang me up and said, I've got something to talk to you about, and came across and said, we've now got a very big contract with Lloyds Bank, who are closing down, I don't know, 14 or 15 branches around in the London area. And so they would need a big warehouse to house this furniture, which could then be sold on, and it would have the benefit that it didn't have to go into landfill sites, that it could be cheaper furniture for a lot of small businesses and charities, and also that it could provide employment for the people who were running the warehouse. And so he knew we were looking for people to have jobs, and so he said, would you like to run a warehouse of 40,000 square feet? And I said, yes, I haven't got a lot of experience in that, but we'll have a go. And so we did, and we found a warehouse down right on the river's edge of the Thames, and the furniture started coming in almost immediately. And that ran for 10 years in the end. And in the last days that we had that, I mean, that gave us quite a big turnover every year in money. We were able to add the work with plastic, and you were more responsible for that, and you had the idea, and you actually worked on promoting that idea and bringing it. And so we bought this magnificent machine which did the job of breaking it all down into manageable bits, and we were therefore able to carry on our recycling work on plastics too. But we also did have work with, for instance, recycling clothes, and we bought some bins for people to put the clothes in so that they would then could be sold off. And for some of our workers, they could be promoted within the organisation and actually become managers of the people rather than finding a job elsewhere. And in the meantime, we were also developing the housing side of things as well. We were adding 1 or 2 more hostels. Surprisingly enough, having left Mayflower in, I think, 1996, with the people that we passed it over to, in the end, closed it down and weren't using the buildings in a way, and so we've all said, could we run one back here? And it's still running. In fact, it's virtually the only thing that is running here. The rest of the place is a desert, really, nothing else happening on site here at all. While all that was going on as a sort of very physical basis of trying to help people's lives and work with people and develop a series of projects, we also wanted to, because we had these contacts right across the borough, and the borough was getting a lot, quite, when I say a lot, 4 or 5 major black African Pentecostal churches who would have memberships of 2,000. So they'd need big buildings in order to be able to house that number of people. And we did manage to make contact with a number of those, and some joined in what we were doing. So that then led on to doing work, again partly funded from outside, with setting up small grants groups. Someone had a project, whether it was a musical project, whether it was a homeless project, whether it was to do with art or whatever. And as long as it was cross-church, bringing people together as far as possible, we could provide seedbed type funding of up to £5,000 for each project. That was a very fruitful way of working in terms of providing a lot of people otherwise who wouldn't be able to fund what they were doing and getting things started.
Our work with women started around 2006. Hannah will now explain how this work started. This is before the time the acronym NRPF, No Recourse to Public Fund, started. Hannah explains the circumstances under which we started our women's work.
What prompted us to start the women's work? Well, we're here in Plashet Grove. It's a fairly big house for this area. It's 4 bedrooms. Peter's mother lived with us. We had 2 children. So when she had died and our children had left home, we'd got an empty house. And my background, my family background has been with hospitality. So my dad would bring people home at night from the pub, and we'd all as children be shuffled into one bed and they could have our bed. So I was used to having people coming in. And so for me, it was a crying shame to have the house empty. And our daughter was working at that time with Alternatives as a family support worker. And so there was we had contact with lots of women who were single, unmarried, having babies. They were undocumented. They were in danger of losing their children because they were undocumented, and they'd got nowhere to go after they had the children because The men who were the fathers didn't want the burden of the baby, and so a lot of these girls were being threatened to have the babies taken off them by social services, and that's social services had no thought of keeping them together. They had the thing that they had responsibility for the baby, didn't have the responsibility for the mother. So they wouldn't take them as a baby and mother like they do now, they'd just take the babies. So we were linked in with alternatives, and so it just became natural, because we got empty bedrooms, to start taking people on, taking girls who were in need to come and live with us, to have the first 6 months where they didn't have to worry. They all had a bedroom each to start with, then they had to bunk in and have 2 in a bedroom, so 2 mothers, 2 babies, and occasionally we had 3 in a bedroom. And it would just be like family. And we sat in this, we're in this kitchen now, and I remember days when the girls had to go somewhere and I looked after the babies in this place here. And they constantly used to say to me, "Anna, why are you doing this?" And I would say to them, one, you know, I feel God has given us so much and we needed to share. But 2, the reason for doing it is, if I had my child in a foreign country, or if my children were stuck in a foreign country in the situation you're in, I would hope someone would take them in. And so I'm only doing what I would hope that someone would do for my children. Well, what happened with Shrewsbury Road is a local church had this house on Shrewsbury Road, and it belonged to a family and to the church, so it was split in half. And then the woman died, and the church, she bequeathed it to the church for church ministry. They had a missionary in it, and then when he went back to America, we said, we could use your house if you wanted us to use it. So that's when 266 came in, and the church had part ownership of it and gave the other part ownership to First Fruits. And that's when we started doing the women's house. So the girls would stay 6 months with us, and then they'd move into that house when they were settled. And when they were in that house, we'd already got contact with the doctor's surgery, and Newham Christian Fellowships had volunteers manning the doctor's surgery, a cafe in the doctor's surgery. And when that finished, I thought, there's an opportunity here to link the doctor's surgery cafe with the women's house. So the women would staff the surgery cafe and serve as a means of supporting themselves within the house. And one of the good things that happened is, when they were in the cafe, when any given mother was in the cafe, the other mothers were looking after her child. So we had a mixed bunch of people, a mixed race it was a multi-mixed race house. So a Nigerian would be looking after a Bengali child, and a Bengali woman would look after a Sri Lankan woman's baby, depending on who was in the house. So they would work together. So it's partly about learning to work to support themselves, but also learning to work to support each other. That this is how we're going to manage.
At First Fruits, it was a core aim not to be dependent on grants for the work that we do. That is why we went down the route of social enterprises. That is to earn the majority of the money the charity makes and it spends. However, that means that the projects under First Fruits are reliant on market forces. When the bust came in the city, we were affected likewise. Peter goes through how we had to let go of some of our biggest social enterprises. This was a very hard time for us. We thought that we were nearly done. However, from the ashes, we were able to rise. and we are still going 25 years on.
After a while we renamed Transform Newham with the hope and the belief that actually we could work out into the community and make a difference on the community, not just in our local churches. And that's why we wanted people to work together to set up all sorts of different projects to do that. And we worked also with the police, try and reduce those sorts of things, and arranged conversations with the police in different parts of the borough. And there was a very moving time when one particular church, which had a very large black congregation and a lot of young people, came along to the launch of what we were doing with the police, and the police had stood up and spoken about it. A very big guy, black guy, came up and whispered in my ear, "Could we pray for the police?" And I said, "Yep, okay." So I went, I asked whether it'd be all right, and the inspector that I was working with said, "Oh, that's a bit surprising, but okay." So the police were up there, and these young guys were coming across and just praying with them and saying that they could see that there were wrong things happening in the borough and that they were sorry and sad that they were happening, but they wanted to be on the side of the police and work with them to provide a better community that we were living in. And as you say, there were others who were from the police who actually wanted to set up their own projects as well within, and we helped them to do that. We worked with particularly one of the churches, or one of the people who was from a black Pentecostal church, who is still doing it, a chap called Jonathan Oliedi, who was nominating a Sunday as the church everybody would pray for. We were able in the end to hire the West Ham Stadium, brought people together from a much wider sponsorship to attend that, and I think we did have 20,000 people attending that. And of course we then were the Olympic Borough in 2012, and that was right at the end of our time here. And so we played a part in a charity, or setting up the charity here called More Than Gold, which was working out into the communities to respond in different ways to the fact that the Olympics were taking place here. So I shouldn't really be wanting just to say all the things we've done and all the things we've worked on, but it was very rewarding. It had its bad moments, and one of the bad moments was that in the end the warehouse housing all this furniture, the group that was doing all the contracts with the firms that were releasing their furniture rang me up and said, "Peter, we're going bust. I'm afraid from tomorrow we won't be sending you any more furniture." They were the only people that supplied us with furniture through the contacts they were made. And so although we struggled to try and find somebody else to take it over, we couldn't, and we had to go into liquidation. And that meant that a number of people lost money due to what had happened. And of course we had to make a number of people redundant. And so to say, it was all a great success story would be a mistake. That there were individual instances where undoubtedly we were struggling and didn't have the answers that were going to make a difference in people's lives. And just seeing the lives of people who have been, hard done by, who have come from other countries, and the experiences that they've had and the ways in which they've had to live, it actually says, we are very fortunate to live in this country, and we're very fortunate to have the opportunities that we have.
Well, for me, First Root Trading were just a small portion of what First Root were doing, and I'd felt that I'd come to my natural end of that work. There was a Congolese who came through one of our hostels who'd actually got a design background, and so for him he came to work with us, and he seemed to be working well and be good at what he was doing, and I felt that he could probably lead the manufacturing side. Unfortunately, because of some of his difficulties in his family, it didn't actually work out. There were some difficulties, particularly with women who were coming from sheltered backgrounds, who really, it was very difficult for them to be up front. Some nationalities, they could always be up front, but some of the Asian women were much quieter. I think a lot of what my job was is to be a grandmother to these children. And so I used to take them walks, and I used to take them everywhere and go around. And yes, maybe the women used to make breakfast down there. I can't remember honestly that, but yeah, if you said it happened, it must have happened. Yes. But it was something amidst a lot of stuff that we were doing at that time.
And so I don't consider that what we do is something of great admiration. It's something which just means that the love of God can cover people from whatever background, whatever opportunities or not that they have had, that He is there to be their Lord and Saviour, and to be there in the good things and the bad things of life. I mean, we just ended in a sense by saying, I think I was then 70 and Hannah was doing her side, and she felt she was finishing what she was doing. And little did we know when we passed it over in 2012 that a year later we would be disappearing up to the northeast of England, and we've lived up there for just over 10 years as well. We left it in your hands, Christina, and I've been so pleased with what you've been able to achieve over this last period of time. I mean, you've concentrated mainly on the housing side rather than the social enterprise side. But we've kept closely in touch, as you know, over that period of time. And I'm full of admiration for the way in which you've taken this forward and grown it. Again, we were in quite a crisis period when we were leaving, and so now it's been taken forward, and I'm just very hopeful that we're expanding, that more people are being housed, more people are being helped into jobs, more people are doing all the things that we've always wanted to happen. And so really it's got all our best wishes. And Jonathan is still there providing money, even though we don't see each other. And so I think keep going.
I was amongst one of the first staff to join First Fruit team and be part of the journey with Peter and Hannah. I took on the lead of First Fruit group of charities when Peter and Hannah stepped down in 2013-2014. I take this opportunity to thank Peter and Hannah and all those who have been part of the journey so far. A very special thanks to Jonathan Ruffer and the Lembria Pringle Trust. Without their support, we will not be here today. Together with my present team, we are looking at the present and to the future with confidence. As Peter says, it has not been success all the way through. There has been heartaches. There has been real challenges to contest with. However, it has also been a time of joy and satisfaction. Today, we hold on to the vision of being a lasting source of resources in East London for those who are homeless and unemployed. To be a place where they can come and turn their lives around for the better. A special thanks and acknowledgement to Peter and Hannah for setting such a huge chunk of their life aside for the betterment of others. And a special thanks to Jonathan Ruffer, who has supported us over the years and who continues to support us.